Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I'm your host, Kenny Bedwell, and we have a very special episode this week. So, for everyone listening, I get the opportunity to go and do podcast episodes on other people's podcasts, and I met a gentleman named David, and he does commercial real estate, but his story and the things that he shared with me when we were chatting, I had to have him on this podcast because I think a lot of times when we talk about real estate, especially in this podcast called Cash Flow Positive, it's all about making money. But does that really fulfill us? Is that the ultimate goal, the dream, and the vision? That's what I want to talk about on today's episode. And I wanted to bring in a man who's got an incredible story. He's been working with nonprofits, is also a real estate investor that we can really learn from. And what I want you to pay attention to in this episode is all the different ways that you can get involved and take the time and how to prioritize that and really just learn how to invest in yourself and in other people beyond just the real estate and the dollars. And so this guy's been investing in real estate. He started his a commercial brokerage in 2014. He's been in nonprofits for a very long time, way before that as well. So without further ado, Caleb David, welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to have this time to be with you today, and thank you for being on my show last week. It was some great conversation. My story is complicated. My background is I grew up ultra conservative Christian as a preacher's kid, but seeing narcissism at its worst,
Mm.
and so grew up very, very strict, very, very in a box. And so I found myself actually in the nonprofit sector for about 20 years of my career, and did that, and I loved it, right? I mean, because you're helping people, and but at some point burnout happens, and so about 13 years ago I was working a nonprofit job and I was just not feeling it. And I also had my own nonprofit that did a lot of work in Ethiopia at the time, but I was just burnt out. I wasn't making any money. I was on food stamps, and the opportunity came along. Someone that I knew was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about real estate?" And I was like, just like everybody else has, I want to be a real estate investor, right? That's the cool thing to do because it's super easy. Um, and so, but I'd never considered commercial. And so they're like, well, there's a local boutique firm that's looking for an assistant and someone to potentially become a broker. So, I was 34, 35 at the time. So I was like, it's now or never. If I'm going to take the leap, I better do it now. But making a transition to a job that is primarily commission based for
Mhm.
everything, I was lucky to have a part-time salary, which didn't cover even my mortgage. Oh, I didn't even have a mortgage at the time. I couldn't qualify for one. And so I got into commercial real estate, and then they said, try it for 90 days. If you like it, great, go get your license. And if not, then it's been good knowing you. And so I decided to take the leap. And so I went and got my materials and crammed it into 30 days, went and took my exam. And of course, little to nothing that was in the exam actually relates to commercial real estate.
Of course.
So I just jumped right in and started doing work. And it was at a time when the market was still recovering from 2008. So I got to taste what it was like not to have money in
Yeah.
real estate.
Okay.
But after the first year, and building relationships and working hard to really find out who are the players in this industry, like title companies, lenders,
Mm.
all of the peripheral businesses, and I started just reaching out and having coffee with people and learning what their role was so I could become better at my job. And after the first year, my peers in Southern Colorado, they voted for me as the rookie of the year. And then the phone started ringing. And, so that's kind of how I got my start.
That's awesome. And so most of our listeners, Caleb, are just short-term rental investors, maybe some doctors or
Yeah.
tech people, whatever. They don't know a lot about commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And so what can you tell us a little bit more, like what types of commercial real estate were you working with mainly?
Yeah.
Or do
So,
you do today as well?
yeah, I do anything commercial. So anything from land to retail, office, industrial. and even some multifamily. And so we've actually had some overlap with short-term rentals because we've got mixed-use properties that, maybe there's retail downstairs and you do short-term rental upstairs. So
Yeah.
we've dabbled in that a little bit. The state of Colorado has really kind of started pushing down approvals on short-term rentals and revoking some licenses.
Mhm.
So we've definitely seen that. But I'm of the mindset some firms get very focused on, you've got to focus on one sector of the market. And after I left that company that I was with, I started another company with three partners during COVID. And that was just a weird time. Was starting to go through a divorce, and it, at, by August of 2020, realized that it wasn't the right fit. So in a year, I started two companies, one being my own.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so started up from scratch twice in 1 year in 2020 while going through divorce. So that was really fun. But then just recently, I joined Keller Williams Commercial. There was an office here that was looking for a commercial director, and so I just really liked the community, the people, the leadership, and so we just recently made that transition about 4 or 5 months ago. But I am of the mindset that in commercial, and then we saw this especially during COVID, how the industrial market was affected by the retail market
Mhm.
because everybody's at home, things are shifting to online, right? But people still want to have retail experiences. But what they would do is they would shrink down their footprint because they're paying a higher premium on rent for retail. Then they were going into industrial spaces for online orders, for backup inventory. Then
Mm.
people started working on their houses, right? So then all of a sudden the HVAC companies are blowing up, the plumbers, the electricians.
Yep.
And so when I first started in the industry in 2014, you know, I, you could buy an industrial building for $40 a square foot. Now you're lucky to find anything under $200 a square foot.
Holy crap.
So,
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons why I don't specialize in one facet, is because there's opportunity in all of the markets if you're willing to learn and adjust with what the market's doing. And I think it helps your clients helps you help your clients understand what they're getting into. And not every client is going to be just retail, right? They're going to maybe they need an offsite office or whatever. So having the ability to be flexible and knowledgeable and an expert in all of those fields is important, I believe.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like the idea too. I know you said it earlier of the, you intermingle, like you found, you've had short-term rentals, but it was like they had retail space or
Yeah.
restaurant or whatever underneath and the short-term rentals above. How does somebody go? So right now, like I said, most of the people listening are short-term rental real estate investors. So they're very focused on the residential side.
Hmm.
That's what short-term rentals really are, is just
Yeah.
residential real estate. So how does one go from your experience to start to learn about that commercial side and the opportunities from the commercial side?
Yeah, I think it starts with identifying what your goals are. What is the outcome you're trying
Sounds
to
familiar.
accomplish?
I
Yes.
talk to people about that all the time. I'm like, search with your goals. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw that one back at you. Um, and so I think that's it. And also understanding the markets, like we talked about, on my podcast, is understanding what's happening in the market, the large markets, and the sub markets around it is really important. And looking for the opportunity and not just following what you think is hot, right?
Mm,
Because if it's hot, then the likelihood of you getting a higher return on your investment is lower, and
right.
so if you can think about where is the market going, and how you do that is you identify a broker that knows the area, and you interview brokers, you look at their Google reviews, you find out, a lot of brokers just don't call people back,
Yeah.
because if they don't know
Yeah.
who you are,
That's very
which is
true.
a disservice to a building owner, right? Or a
Mhm.
seller. Um, but I think it's finding a broker that understands your goals, knows how to get you there, knows all the different players that are going to come into this, zoning, planning, the regional building department, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Is the building up to code? I could keep going on and on
Yeah.
about the different things that need to be looked at, but finding a broker that comes highly recommended, and again, I would say look at Google reviews and identify who you want to work with, interview a few, and find out who you have a right personality fit with as well. And what I would say is you don't need a broker that knows everything. You need a broker that's curious. You need a broker that is willing to ask questions and get the answers they don't have. So if you're working with a newer broker, there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as they are knowing and have leadership that are pointing them in the right direction to help you. So this is a hard business to get into. It's very difficult. So give the new guys a chance, especially if they're teachable and they're willing to get answers for you.
That's good advice. I really like that a lot. That's super helpful. Yeah, it's funny just hearing it's not the same stuff, but it's like the same principles with
Hmm.
different types of investment classes in real estate for
Yeah.
what people are trying to acquire. So I think that our listeners will find that, if they're interested in this, they'll find, yeah, wow, I understand those concepts. And yes, it's a
Yeah.
new type of investment, but it's not completely foreign and
It's
kind of,
not. It's not. And then I think
yeah.
you need to understand, what kinds of leases are out there. Is the property already leased? Is that lease at the market value, or are they
Mm,
below? When does their lease end? When can you maybe do a bump in rents?
yeah.
Looking for the upside, right? And and I think too, finding a broker, and this is difficult, is finding a broker who will listen to you and ask you questions, right?
Right.
And will allow you to ask as many questions as you need so that you can understand what you're walking into. And one of the things that I pulled from the nonprofit sector, in the social justice field is, not everything is at surface level, right? There's an issue, then you can humanize it once you meet someone, and then through that relationship and communication, you actually learn what the person is actually looking for, what they're trying to communicate, what their needs are. And so I think finding a broker that can have a conversation with you with respect and dignity, that's something that I pulled over from the nonprofit sector into what I do, because kindness and empathy is kind of a lost art in commercial real estate. So but I so
I'll
I
start
would
a lot of real estate, but yeah,
that's
that's a
true.
good
That is
point.
true. Because really, like a lot of people, it's about the money, it's about the transaction, it's about the
Yep.
commission check. And for me and my what I do in commercial, I mean, kind of our tagline is creating space, building community. And
Mm.
so everything that we do is through that lens.
That's awesome. And I think that's a good segue into kind of the topic I wanted to talk today, which is about, going beyond, looking beyond just real estate for, we're doing this for dollars.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people, what's your why? Why are you doing this? And, I hear financial freedom or like make more money or replace my W-2 or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of us need to have a deeper purpose.
Yeah.
I am Christian and I believe that, God's given us talents and abilities and opportunities that other people don't have.
Yeah.
And I find, I even find myself looking in the mirror sometimes and I'm like, am I, am I thinking about this? Am I sure, I'm in real estate trying to invest, make money and
Yeah.
teach you about that. But is that the focus? Is that the goal of what I want
Right.
to be and who I want to be defined as?
Yeah.
And why, like, when I was looking at your bio, we talked about this before the show, just for the listeners, catching them up. But this guy, like everyone listening, like you got to pay attention to this guy's story and some of the stuff he's doing. It's incredible, and that's what we want to dive into here. Caleb, is like, what are you doing today? So you're obviously making money
Yeah.
now, whereas before you weren't, and now you're like, I'm
Yeah.
making money, but you're still doing nonprofit. So tell us about that today. Let's get into that.
Yeah, no, and I think it is. It's really about what drives you and what impact are you going to leave after you're gone, right? Just
Yeah.
leaving your kids an inheritance. That's great. Um, but also real estate is up and down. The last 3 years have been really rough. And so I haven't been able to give financially as much as I used to. But I was talking to my therapist one day a little over a year ago, and she was like, because I shut down my nonprofit that was doing work in the Middle East and Ethiopia. And we can jump into that a little bit later too. But COVID happened. The rest of my
Mm,
life was starting to fall apart. And so I just stopped. And what we did is we took people on trips. So I would take people to the Palestinian, not the Palestinian border, but the Syrian border when the
okay.
Syrian refugee crisis was happening, so that we could sit with the Syrian family and understand beyond the issue, and what we were hearing on TV, and have a meal with them and really try to understand what was going on there. And so I did a lot of work. We did some work in Palestine and Israel as well. And it's just like, it's so crazy when you walk into a situation that you have an opinion on, and then it's like your mind is blown. Nothing is what you think it is, right? And so I think that takes a certain level of humility um, to be able to do that and change our minds based on new information. And then both my kids are adopted from Ethiopia, so it's been like my second home, and I've been there close to 30 times over the last 15 years. I
Yeah.
haven't been since 2019, but it's like a second home, and I think there's in understanding how a worldview shapes our everyday business, I think is important. But the political issues, the social issues that mean something to you, I think it's important for there to be involvement. And it's one of the reasons why I applied to be in the Colorado Governor's Fellowship in 2020 and was in that program from 21 to 22 and just learned so much more. And learning that there's, we don't have as much different, as we think we do. And in social media and all these things have created so much division.
Yep.
And so I think it's easy for us to have our energy and mindset distracted by all the noise that we forget that we've got people right in front of us that we can serve every day. Our
That,
clients, number one, but then also serving on local boards and things that matter that don't take a whole lot of time. And so when I went to my therapist and I had not done, a ton in the nonprofit world for about 3 or 4 years at the time, and she's like, do you need something? Like, do you need to give a little bit? I'm
yeah.
like, oh, that was a very kind way of saying,
Go do it. Yeah.
go do something. And
Yeah.
so I have the privilege of being a board member this past year for an organization called Crazy Love Africa that's based in Denver, just about 30 minutes from where I live. And we're actually planning our annual gala, which is tomorrow, and really
Okay.
excited about it. We'll have about 200 people there. We're doing like a homecoming theme with corsages and all the things. To raise awareness for the women and children that we are advocating for and supporting in Uganda. And I always look for organizations that are restoring dignity and apply respect to the people that they serve. So to me, that's even more important than what religion the organization is affiliated with, if they are or not, is how do they treat people? And it's about empowerment, not about handouts, so that we as Americans can feel good. And there's a great book out there called When Helping Hurts that I recommend for people that are looking to get into the nonprofit sector or to support and find an organization. That is such a vital book that teaches
Sorry, say that
how
one more time. What's it called?
it's called When Helping Hurts.
When helping hurts. Okay.
Yes, because we go with our mindset, um, that we're Americans, we're the greatest country in the world. Let us go to another country and let us tell you what we think you should do, without understanding social constructs, what limitations there are,
Sure.
financials, job opportunities. And so that's what I love about what Crazy Love Africa does, is they really empower women. We currently have 26 sisters in the program, and they're all living with HIV. And so it's even more important right now than ever to find organizations that do support people with HIV, because earlier this year when USAID got cut, 90% of the access to medicine in Africa is gone.
That's
And so this is something that these women rely on and have to have. And then they all have children, most of them whose fathers have left. And, they don't get child support, right? And school is not free. That costs something. And so they have a really holistic approach to supporting the women, empowering them, giving them counseling, giving them healthcare, but then also teaching them a trade. And so they also offer $500 micro grants, which, if anyone's listening, that is a great way to get involved, is provide a $500 micro grant. They become usually self-sustaining within a year or so, and that money ends up making a huge difference. So now, you know, the woman can provide food for her family. Now, she may not still be able to afford school, which is why we have the sponsorship program for the kids. And we just finished building a community center so that these women can come together. There's so much stigma around HIV in Africa, and it's unsafe. So
Yeah.
you have people are very secretive about it, and there's shame around it. There's all kinds of things that apply. So one of the other things that they do is they help these women make these incredible crafts. They're fair trade certified. And if people go to Crazy Love Africa, you can go see like the incredible baskets, the ornaments, and all these different things that are jewelry that's just amazing. These women have made it with their own hands. And then that's another way for them to have additional income. And so I'm just really excited about it's a small organization, but it's one that's easy to plug in and get involved with.
That's awesome. Okay, so uh first off, you said it's called Praise Love Africa. So I assume
Crazy
that's
love,
oh,
crazy love.
Crazy Love
Yep.
Africa. Crazyloveafrica.com if someone's
Yep.
interested in learning more about that. Okay, organization. That's really cool. Is it based out of Denver? Is it kind of
It is
nationwide?
based out of Denver,
Okay.
but their work primarily is in Uganda, and the goal is to move into Ethiopia as well. But the director of this organization is very involved with the unhoused population here in town, the immigrants, in making sure that there's resources available. So it's one of those things that yeah, planning this gala has been a lot of work, but it's one of those things that even if I don't have 10 grand to drop right now to give to
Yeah.
them and support them, I can give my time,
Mm,
and throughout the entire year, maybe it's 40 hours, maybe a little bit more. But I think getting involved with causes that you believe in, but then also understanding, the impact that they're having, how they're treating people, I think is super important. So if you don't have if you have money to give, great, but I think there's something about us not just receiving money from commission checks, but using that and our time as a tool to get involved in our communities.
yeah, that's really so for you personally. I mean, I'd love to hear it. Has that helped you feel more fulfilled just in the day to day?
Yeah, for sure. The caveat to that is, when I used to do this before I went through kind of like my own dark night of the soul and I had to like shed a lot of ego and lose my
Yeah.
business. And, I was doing that unintentionally to make myself feel better. Right.
Mm,
The need to be needed. And my purpose was so wrapped up in what other people thought about the work that I did or where I was involved. So I think we need to take a look at our intentions,
mhm.
and yes, it is fulfilling, but it's not one of those things where I feel like because the nonprofit world was my entire identity, right? And so when that
Yeah.
went away, I'm like, who am I?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's important for us as humans to continue to develop and grow, lose more ego, and really question ourselves honestly about why am I doing this? Right. And so I think that's super important because otherwise it can get very codependent.
Mhm.
And then it can also just, it's just really just not healthy. So, but yes, I would say I'm coming into this now as a different person than I was 5 years ago. Right.
Mhm.
And I'm coming in just because I just feel like it's my job to put some good into the world. If I get recognized for it or not, I don't care. Right. It's like, just go and do the work.
Yeah, yeah, you're on another level. It's really cool. I'm really grateful we're able to have you on here and really, I mean, the goal of this episode for listeners is inspire you guys to think beyond just making the buck, obviously making an impact in your community, but not just doing it to say that you did it, but doing it to because you feel that it's, going to be important. And it doesn't have to be that, like you said, I mean, if you don't have a lot of money, it's you can give time,
Mhm.
you can do other things. And so there's one question, and probably a softball question for you, but I'm sure a lot of people kind of think about this in the back of your head, or at least I do. I'm in a new area. How do I get connected? How do I even start to begin the research process of finding
Yeah.
these nonprofits or finding local organizations
Yeah.
that, beyond a food bank or whatever?
Right. Well, I think it goes back to questioning what sets you on fire, what brings you joy. What are
Mhm.
your talents? What are your talents? What do you have to give? And I encourage people, like for me, like if a travel show comes on, I'm in, especially if they're talking about the social stuff that's happening there and political or whatever. Like there's something identifying what just sparks something in you, right?
Mhm.
And whether it's watching a TV show or reading a book, what is standing out to you? And I mean, we're in the age of Google and AI, right? And now they're combined. So just putting in what are organizations in this area that serve, maybe it's a dog shelter or like you said, a food bank or,
Yeah.
coming alongside women that are struggling financially, all these different things, job trainings. Are there social impact businesses in town that you can support and try to bring people to? Um, like there's so many ways to look at it, but I think it's really about quieting yourself and being like, what makes me come alive? and then doing those Google searches and start researching the organizations. And nonprofits are required by the IRS to file a 990, which kind of shows their financials. So look through that, see where their money's going. If you're looking at an organization where the top is super heavy, some of the nonprofits here in Colorado Springs, I mean, the heads of the organizations are making over $500,000 a year.
Mm,
So I tend to try to find the organizations that are a little bit more lean and mean with their operations, but maybe they're not making as flashy of an impact with numbers per se. But if they're making lasting change, that's the thing. It's about the empowerment and it's about the follow through, not just about, hey, this organization reached a million people this year. That's great.
yeah.
But how effectively can an organization really follow through and document um, the impact, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Literally changing someone's life.
exactly. And so I think it is finding those organizations that you believe that are causes that you believe in, and doing research in your area. Lots of times on the websites, they'll say, this is what we're looking for. If it's financial or they need a mentor for someone, there's tons of different ways to get involved. And if they need help on a board,
Mhm.
if you can introduce them to new people and new funding sources, it's great. So, but I would just use the power of the internet just to see what's there, and then take your time and go through and make a decision based on the information that you find. If they're not being transparent, then yeah, and look at their staff, the health of their staff, right?
Mm, that's
The
good. That's good.
culture, and that will tell you a lot about an organization. But yeah, find the ones that seem to pique your interest. Go meet with them, and just see kind of if it's a
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Now, you're doing your commercial real estate. You mentioned earlier, you alluded to, or you just straight out said it, like the market's been up and down recently. I'm sure, especially commercial side, it's probably
Yeah,
been down more than up.
yeah,
Uh, so, like, I'm sure you're having to work hard. You're having to hustle more than before. Uh, probably consumes a lot of your time. So
yeah,
how do you find time to literally go out and help other people do these galas, plan these events, and like you said, maybe 40 hours a year, whatever, but like still find that time, that prioritize that
yeah,
in your life. Like, how do you do that with this busy, hustle?
yeah. I mean, I think it's about being present in the moment. I
Mm,
think I'm finally at a place in my life where I'm done chasing things, and I try to allow things to come to me.
yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm not proactive, but I think a lot of it is setting my priorities. What makes me come alive? I need to have time to rest. I'm not in my 30s anymore. I'm on the downhill to 50 right now in about less than a month.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so, so I think it's just come with time and in prioritizing things, right?
Mhm.
And setting expectations for my clients as well as for the nonprofit that I work with, and making sure that I have enough margin to be healthy and not be scrambling all the time. And, you know, I've actually had a lot of downtime, and this year has been busier than last year. But when the market's horrible, then you're just chasing stuff, and you're just kind of like, you've got all this downtime, and then you get depressed. So I
Mm,
think filling that time with something more positive and life-giving. And so I think for me, it's really just about looking at my week, what's going on, and how do I plug in? Where do I need to take time for myself so that I am a lot more effective? And I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, I probably take 3 naps a week in the middle of the day because I want to be fresh.
yeah.
I don't want to be operating out of a mindset that's just tired and burnt out. And so
Hmm.
what I find though is when I prioritize and then I take care of myself, when I open up my computer after my nap, I'm getting 4 hours of work done in an hour, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's important I work with a business coach, that I share my values and what I'm wanting to do. And then she helps me kind of like set up my life to do that. Yes, things come and go, but that you don't plan for. But I think for me, it's more of just like time blocking and making sure that I have given myself enough margin to be my best self in work and
Yeah.
in serving.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, Caleb. I have a hard question for you, and I hope
Okay,
that's okay. I don't mean to
bring it.
I was just thinking, I was like, man, this guy sounds like Superman. And so I got to ask, because people always, we hear so much on podcasts and shows and social media, like the good and like what people are doing to improve themselves. And it's really inspiring. I think
Yeah,
and everything you've said has been great. But I got to know, like, I'm sure, like you're a human being. So like,
yeah.
what things are you working on for yourself personally, whether it's in your business or in the nonprofit or whatever, to just improve and be better, to find
Yeah,
more.
I think for me, a lot of it is letting go of my ideas and expectations of what should be happening.
Mm,
Um, I'm also continuously working through. I mean, I'll be honest. In the last 3 years, I've almost gone bankrupt 3 times, right?
wow.
And there were days that I would wake up literally at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I would get up. I'd do an hour worth of work, the bare minimum to get by, and I'd lay back down, take another nap, and then go to bed at 11:30. The depression and anxiety was real.
Mm,
And so, things like therapy, working with my business coach, um, doing other therapies that are, like EMDR, because I come from a childhood of significant trauma where there was never enough. Like, for example, at 15, I was working almost full time, going to high school, and a couple of times had to pay my family's mortgage. So another thing that needing to let go of is that as long as am doing something and striving, that I deserve some sort of, income or whatever. And that's a mindset of poverty, right? It's a mindset
right.
of lack. So something I'm continuously working on is doing affirmations and also doing a lot of letting go, doing breathing exercises, there's an app called the tapping solution that helps, like when I start feeling myself getting that fight or flight, right?
Mm,
How about I sit down for 12 minutes and just breathe, come back into my body and be present? Um, and just having a support system. It's not about the number of friends that you have or family, it's the quality.
yeah.
And are they helping you get to where are they aligned with where you're at and where you're looking to go?
Yeah, that's awesome. First of all, I appreciate you sharing and willing to entertain that question. I just
Yeah.
thought, like, I gotta, yeah, I mean, you've shared so much. I guess so. What else, as we're kind of like wrapping up here, what else can you share with the listeners that might inspire them to help them, or just point them in the right direction of, taking that next step and just thinking beyond, the work and the hustle and because
Hmm.
yeah, I'm thinking about the average listener. A lot of them have jobs, full-time
Yeah.
jobs. They might
Yeah.
like their jobs. They might be, like we talked about, like physicians or attorneys or
Hmm.
whatever, and that's what they're really good at. But then
Yeah.
they go, man, I'm also trying to invest in real estate. I just don't even have any time to think about, all these other things I want to. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know. Any words of advice for that type of person?
Yeah, I would say, initially just doing that research of, if you're wanting to get involved in real estate, find that broker that you click with,
Yeah.
evaluate the goals and the market you're interested in to see if this is the right time or not. It may not be the right time.
Mm,
And you may be like, okay, this is the direction I want to go, but I need to save up this much money, or I need to pull in another investor, or I need to look at a different market. But I would say having your finances in order, knowing what you have cash wise, knowing that if you were to go to a lender, have all of your financials in order. Talk to your CPA, and get the advice from, if you've got a financial planner, get their thoughts and their input in how you are going to reach these goals, and then getting with the broker and seeing what's out there. But I think it's really a lot of asking questions um, and knowing when timing is right. But I think, there's plenty to read out on the internet, but, and like you said earlier, like a lot of these podcasts and things that you read, it's all this flashy stuff and this and that.
yeah.
Um, but the reality is it's grueling, right?
Mhm.
Every once in a while, a deal will fall in your lap and you're like, this is amazing, right? But it's really about understanding the market, understanding what your goals are. And I think too, not getting overwhelmed by how big this feels, right?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good.
Set
Yeah.
your goal, right? And then take the next step. And maybe it's once a week you reach out to a broker or your CPA, taking those small steps to where you're not like putting all this pressure on yourself that you've got to do something within 30 days. That is not true. And most rush deals are bad deals.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And so I would say, just kind of like on the personal side of things and your personal health and your mental health, just figure out what's the next right thing.
Yeah,
And then focusing on that one thing, then once you get that information, process it. Then think, what is the next right thing? And do that. So
that's awesome. Okay, no, thank you, so much. This is really awesome, man. I really appreciate you
yeah,
you being willing to join the show, open up. That was
yeah,
huge. Share your story, your successes, the things you're working on. I hope number one, this I mentioned this before. I hope this was inspiring to the listeners.
yeah,
It was inspiring for me personally. I've had it's funny the like past few months I've been like, man, I need to do more. I need to do something
yeah,
else. I
yeah,
I donate. It just but it's that fulfillment side
yeah,
that takes it to the next level where it's like
yep,
impacting people, not just giving handouts. So I
yes,
think that's really important. I encourage everybody listening to start thinking like that. But
yeah,
Caleb, once again, man, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a great episode. And as we're kind of wrapping up, what's the best way if they're looking for commercial deals in Colorado or
yeah.
which areas you cover? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I will preface this with saying if any of your listeners are looking to get involved, in or have questions about commercial real estate, but also the nonprofit sector, reach
Yeah.
out to me. Right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have to be in Colorado. Like if you just need somebody to bounce something off of, I'm here to talk and see if I can help point you in the right direction. Um, but yeah, people can follow me on Instagram at Caleb David, and same on Facebook, LinkedIn. And we've got a podcast as well called Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. So if people are wanting to learn a little bit more, they can go where they listen to podcasts and do it there. But go to our website, which is davidcommercial.com, and you can reach out by phone or email, and we'll respond usually within a day.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's great. So go follow him on Instagram. I require everyone to go do that. And then if you want to reach out to him, please. What you said your website was davidcommercial.com, right? And
Yep.
then obviously they can message you on social media, I
Yep.
hope.
Yep.
So, okay,
Absolutely.
great, great, great. Well, Caleb, thank you so much for being on the show. And I appreciate everybody listening. And I hope you found just at least one nugget from this. And if you did, it would mean the world to me if you could go and leave a review on one of the whatever site you're listening through. So thanks so much, Caleb.
Thank you.
All right,
Had a
thanks
great
everybody
time.
for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Cash Flow Positive.